been affected. Surprisingly, most of the donor countries that give support to countries like Uganda were the first countries to be hit by the high spread of coronavirus. This afternoon, I am privileged to host Mr. Leny Mugisha, the National Director of Compassion International Uganda. He's here to give us his perspective of how COVID-19 has greatly had an effect on the non-government organization using compassion as a very case study. That and more is what we are going to be discussing in the few minutes that we are going to be here. Country Director Leny Mugisha, you're welcome to Smart 24 TV.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Okay. One would want to know, who is Mr. Leny Mugisha?
Well, my name, as you have just heard, Leny Mugisha, and I'm the National Director for Comopassion International, a non-government organization whose primary mission is to advocate for the children who live in extreme poverty. Comopassion International is a Christ-centered organization that has been here since 1980, and we currently partner with 444 churches across the Uganda, and together we are serving 130,000 children. I could say babies, children and youth in different categories, and so it's a great honor for me to be here. Besides that, I am a husband and a father at the same time, so it's a great day for me to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Yes, we are streaming live on different social media platforms. If you want to be part of this discussion, you could follow us on our Facebook page, that is Smart 24 TV. You could go on our Twitter handle, that is Smart 24 TV Uganda. On YouTube, you could as well go to Smart 24 TV. And me, Fred Makubuya, you can as well follow me on Fred Makubuya. Make your opinion so that we can be in position to discuss, even at the same time when we are struggling to make sure that we do away with this pandemic called COVID-19. Country Director Leny Mugisha, in your preamble you've talked about poverty. Poverty is relative. What is your definition about poverty?
Well, in our own understanding, anything that hinders a child or anything that hinders somebody from living a dignified life, we classify that as poverty. In our case, we have very clear areas of intervention. We look at the spiritual aspect of a child, we look at the physical aspect of a child, we look at the social emotional aspect of the child, and look at the cognitive aspect of the child. Overall, in that holistic sense, our understanding is that there are demands that come from all those aspects. And for a child who is progressing so well and meeting their age-appropriate developmental indicators, at different levels of their ages, they should be able to exhibit a certain degree of development, either in their spiritual growth, in their physical growth, in their social emotional growth, how a child reacts to another child, how even an adult interacts with another child, another adult. So we look at that from that holistic standpoint. Now, in our mode of operation, whenever we go to a community, working together with the local church in that community and working with other local leaders in that community, we are able to identify what are those parameters within that particular setting. What are those parameters that make a child or define an individual as a highly needed person or a person who is living in extreme poverty. You would agree with me that poverty in the setting where you are here, the poorest person here may probably be the richest person in another community altogether.
That's true, that's true.
So different communities come up with different criteria for identifying who the neediest people are in that particular community. So we don't have a national position in terms of defining who the poorest is. We want to go and depend entirely on the local data, depend on the local leaders, depend on the local church in identifying and defining who the neediest person is when we're identifying those that we're going to support. You've
talked about something very fundamental, reaching out to the public, reaching out to those who are vulnerable, reaching out to those who are poor. Last week, I understand Compassion International reached out to the office of the PM and offered almost 1.2 billion Ugandan shillings. I hope I'm right. Why did you come out as well?
Yeah, I think it's so important that as Ugandans, we recognize that this government has, the government of Uganda has made a tremendous efforts in fighting COVID-19. It goes without saying that Uganda probably on the African continent, is one of the countries, one of the governments that have really put in place very clear measures to keep Ugandans safe out of this pandemic. And so we have, as a child development organization and as an organization that is working with people who live in extreme poverty, we have had interactions with the Prime Minister's office, and we really want to take this opportunity to again appreciate the Prime Minister's office and the National Task Force against on the fight of COVID-19 for the support and their understanding and their willingness to engage other players in this fight. And so we had that engagement in terms of understanding what are the possibilities that we can continue to reach out to the people that we serve. As I mentioned, we serve 130,000 babies, children, and youth in different categories.
Okay.
And by extension, we reach out also to their families.
Okay.
We reach out to their communities. When you talk about a single child in every family, you are talking about a family could be having a father, or could be having a grandmother, or could be having a father and mother, has aunties, has siblings. So we have one child per family, but by extension, we are talking about a bigger population of people that are reaching out to.
Okay.
So our question to the Prime Minister's office was, how are we going to continue to support these families given the lockdown?
Okay. I realize you keep on repeating the word child, child, child.
Yes.
And maybe to those, you may agree or you may not agree with me, that most of the countries that have been hit by COVID-19 are countries where you get donations from.
Yeah.
Those could be countries like Ethiopia, those could be countries like Kenya, those could be countries like Belgium, those could be countries like many European countries. Should we continue, should we expect more continuation of Compassion's performance?
Yeah. Let me just say, let me mention this. In Africa, Compassion is working in 8 countries. In East Africa, we are in 5 countries. Globally, we have about 21 countries that support us, that give us finances, give us funding.
Okay.
Our biggest funder is United States of America,
which is one of the most hit as we talk right now.
Absolutely. But when we talk about that overall, you could say United States has about 1.5 million NGOs that actually get support from the American people. Compassion is one of them. So far, based on our engagements with our international partners and based on our engagements with our global leaders, we have not had any indication to make us be scared that we are going to lose a good number of our supporters. So we are living with lots of hope that beyond COVID-19, after the lockdown, we shall still go ahead and serve the people of Uganda that we have been serving them. We are not scared at this point. Yes, we know that some sponsors are going to be affected. Some will probably cancel. Some of our donors might cancel. But we have seen God at what times. One donor cancels and 2 other donors come on board.
Okay.
So despite what is going on now, we are hoping that our direct supporters will not be affected. But even if 1 or 2 is affected, we are still hopeful that we will continue to do ministry in this country.
Okay. I understand the president offered these directives at a point either. I understand in one of the areas you reach out to are university students, people in primary school, people in secondary school, parents who are both pregnant and those who have already delivered. Like I did ask, is this support going to continue? Even at a time when the lockdown is ongoing, what are you doing with the students' finances?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have had also a global engagement with our supporting countries. And the question has been, we have been sending this money to support people going to school, children get the medical support that they need. What other alternative ways are you going to be spending this money on? And I need to be very clear on that. Today, when you think about COVID-19, the most affected people, I don't want to shy away from this truth. The most affected people are the people who live from hand to mouth.
Okay.
People whose income, who are probably in the lowest income bracket. And so we are using part of that money to make some of the essential needs of those families available to them. For example, food. If these people have been working on a daily basis and getting probably little money here and there to sustain their families, and that's not happening. We are working with local church, and that connects with what we were discussing about earlier in this program, what the Prime Minister's office endorsing Comopassion to go ahead and serve the people that we serve. So we are working with the local churches we work with. We are working with the Prime Minister's office together with RDCs and the local leaders to give us access, to give the church access to deliver food to those families that we are here to serve. So I can tell you that our programs are no longer the same programs we were running 3 months ago, but we are running programs depending on the needs of the people that God has invited us to serve.
So COVID-19 has had a great effect on even on the performance of NGOs, Comopassion, using Comopassion as a case study.
Yeah.
So how are you reaching out to these children? How are you reaching out to the parents in a situation where there's a lockdown? Much as we are expecting the president to speak to us this evening, so what are you doing in a situation where we have a lockdown?
Now, again, I think as a matter of fact, the lockdown is real. There's no question about it. Many organizations are not functioning the same way they were functioning before the lockdown. But the organizations which care and really wanted to find alternative ways to reach out to these families had to engage. They engaged. At least I can speak for Comopassion. We engaged again with the Prime Minister's office and were given the leeway. And so we are able to work with the local leaders, to work with the RDCs, to give us the endorsement, to give the local church the endorsement, to be able to buy food and other essentials, avail them at a given center, stipulate the time frame within which they are going to distribute that without allowing many people to come together at the same time, invite families, one family after one family, to come and pick the essential need that they need to run through the lockdown. Otherwise, if we all back off under the explanation that it's a lockdown, the most needy Ugandans are going to suffer and suffer extremely. So we have remained relevant to the people that we serve. Okay.
Yeah. Martin Luther King Jr. says what makes up a leader is not where things are okay. What makes up a leader is not where he stands in the moments of comfort, but in the moments of controversy. Most of the NGOs, as we talk right now, are nowhere to be seen. They are no longer in operation, they are no longer in existence. What may explain that?
As I think, Fred, as you mentioned, let me also bring in this other saying, a friend in need
is a really friend indeed.
And so it would have been a bit shameful for Comopassion in a time like this to suddenly back off or lock ourselves behind our gates and assume that at the end of COVID-19 lockdown, we shall still walk back to the same people and we tell them how much we love them.
Okay.
And so we came to the understanding that these are unusual times. And so the conventional means of doing ministry are not going to work. And at this point, I want to appreciate our partners, the churches that we work with. They have been able to connect with their communities and be able to continue serving the people that we are serving, without subjecting any family or any individual to any risk of COVID-19, but finding how else can we be able to meet the needs of the people that we are serving.
Okay.
And so I could simply say instances where organizations have cared, or individuals have cared, or governments have cared, they have always found alternative ways to continue serving God's people, especially in the toughest times when people need help from those who care about them. Okay.
Most organizations have cut off staff. Talk about government, parastatals, KCCA have cut off staff. Even those that operate like Comopassion, non-government organizations have cut off staff. What is the situation with Comopassion?
No, currently we have not laid off any staff and we are not having that conversation. We are still trusting that God is going to make a way for us to remain, again, relevant in the communities where we're working. We don't intend to reduce staff unless something happens in the future that is not known to us at this point. But we don't intend to cut off staff. We are not thinking about reducing staff's remuneration. We are not thinking about reducing the sponsored children that we currently have on our program. So far we are hopeful that we are at the end of COVID-19 lockdown, we shall sink back into ministry to carry on with the same business that we have done in the past.
Okay.
So we are living with lots of hope.
Okay. How are you reaching out with, especially the HVC, which we call the highly vulnerable children, highly vulnerable patients, living across the different suburbs like Kamocha, Ntinda, to mention but a few, in a situation where we have a lockdown, and this would be the most important time that such parents would be in need of you?
Our value chain, I think, is very clear. We don't, as a Compassion, we don't have a direct reach to the families of people that we serve. We solely depend on the local church. So what we have done, together with the staff, our frontline church staff, we have been able to identify, the churches have been able to identify the families which are in extreme need for support. Once those families are identified, they communicate back to us. The money is already available at the local church, and then the local church can be able to go out for HVC, think about mothers, think about even illnesses, children who fall sick in this season. How else are we? So we are able to identify them and find the quickest way, probably one person of the church staff members to be able to identify those, to be able to reach out to that family and be able to get that child to the nearest health center possible. In other words, as I mentioned, we are not carrying out ministry the same way we carried it out 3 months ago. But as a matter of fact, for every need that comes up, we have to find creative ways. Through our networks, through the local church, through the local leaders, we have to find creative ways to be able to serve that child. It's going to be a season, more to speak, of survival. How do you and I survive through this time?
Okay.
But think about the neediest person. How do we walk alongside that person to also be able to cross over to the other side of life when we end this COVID-19?
Okay. What lesson do we have to learn? Let's discuss that after this very short commercial break. Don't go away.
Smart 24. Smart business.
Even when your friends and family are away during this lockdown, let them feel your love and care. Use MTN Momo to send them money. It's safer, cleaner, and now free of charge. Simply dial 165*1# to send money. You can also pay for goods and services using MTN Momo Pay. It's free of charge. Simply dial 165*3# and enter the merchant code to pay. Terms and conditions apply. Stay safe.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
A moment of clarity in its purest form can be everyday experience. When your world is beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside, elegance will be the definition of your life. A long life with the ability to withstand wear, pressure, or damage. That's our statement of durability. Everything has a breaking point. The difficulty in getting there is in the state of being physically strong. Magnificence will come to you when everything around you is magnificent. Glass and steel, look no further than Casemates A Limited.
tukwatagane.
Okyasobola okukwatagana n'abantu bo mu kiseera kino. Yogera ekiro ng'okozesa MTN Night Calls. Teekako airtime oba bando nga biweza siringi 5 olunaku. Olyoka ofune eddakiika 6 ez'obwereere okukuba amasimu ku MTN wakati w'essaawa 6 ez'ekiro n'essaawa 12 ez'okumakya. Enkola n'obukwakkulizo bigobererwa. Weekuume.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Convenience gives you the freedom to accomplish your daily tasks with ease. Imagine the possibilities for the many created by additional breaths of life by few. Different worlds can always be brought together as easily as metallic pieces welded to each other. The reward for a good day will always be a great night. Oxgas Uganda Limited, your #1 center for oxygen, medical oxygen, LP gas, nitrogen, argon gas, carbon dioxide, among others. We are located in Akawa, plot number 501.
*M# okuweereza ssente. Osobola n'okukozesa MTN Momo Pay okusasulira ekintu kyonna ky'oba oguze. Ya bwereere, nyiga bunyizi *M65*3#. Awo ozzeeko merchant code okusasula. Amateeka n'obukwakkulizo bigobererwa. Mwekuume.
Everywhere you go, MTN. Smart 24. Smart business.
Well, a very good afternoon and thank you to those who have just joined us. My name is Fred Makubuya. We are still making sense of how COVID-19 has greatly affected the non-government organization. And my guest this afternoon is none other Mr. Leny Mugisha. He's here to give us his perspective of how COVID has greatly affected the NGOs. But before we get into the discussion, it is important for me to give you this alert about how greatly conmens are escalating in our country, Ghana. It is a very simple announcement from MTN. They are saying be careful of the conmen who call asking for your mobile money PIN. Stay alert and keep your PIN safe. Do not share your PIN number with anyone. All information about MTN promotions is communicated in the media like radio, TV, like what we are doing right now on Smart 24 TV, stations or social media, and the MTN media website. When I talk about the social media, you can also go to our different media platforms. Smart 24 TV Uganda, that is our Twitter handle, Smart 24. That is our Facebook page. You can be able to find that very, very information. So be careful of the conmen who call asking for your mobile money PIN. Stay alert and keep your PIN safe. Do not share your PIN number with anyone. All information about MTN promotion is communicated in the media like radio and TV stations, all social media, and then the MTN website. Please call that very number, that is 100, that is the toll-free, or visit the MTN website at www.mtn.co.ug for more information about current promotions and other services. This message is endorsed by not any other, but by the Uganda Communications Commission. MTN everywhere you go, and that is their promise. We also continue to thank you for using MTN as your number one line. It is dedicated to give you the best of whatever you need in your different business aspects and in so many other aspects. Like I did mention, my guest is Mr. Leny Mugisha, the National Director of Comopassion International Uganda. Comopassion International Uganda is one of the non-government organizations that reaches out to different people, different individuals, to make sure that they help them get out of the place where they are, but also get to a place where they are supposed to be. We are still making sense of how COVID has greatly affected the economy, especially those that are operating in the non-government organization. Mr. Leny Mugisha, how do we handle the effects? Yes, we've talked about the effects on families, we've talked about the effects in the health sector, we've talked about the national. How are we going to handle now the effects that have come as a result of COVID-19?
I think I need to mention that some of the basic thoughts or ideas or precautions that have been taken to prevent the spread of COVID are part of what we actually are part of our programming as Comopassion International. We, I mean some of them, matters of hygiene are very key in terms of human development.
That's true, that's true.
Quite a number of illnesses come because of either for lack of access to safe water, lack of access to hygienic things like soap and water, and either access to safe environments, clean environments, and so we continue that path of sensitizing the people that we serve, sensitizing Ugandans to take care of their health in terms of keeping themselves clean. In terms of the after effect, frankly speaking, none of us has really carried out a thorough check to establish exactly what the effects are. I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation to have once we have walked out of the lockdown and we have begun assessing the impact of this and the continuity of our businesses. At this point, we can only speak about what we know. In terms of our NGO, Comopassion International, we are able to continue serving. We don't know for a certain how many NGOs are getting out of business. We don't know how many will continue business and how many will continue business the same way they have always done business. Maybe some are going to downsize. Maybe some are even going to expand. We are suspecting, for example, our arm, which is wash arm, that's water, water and sanitation aspect of Comopassion, which we are also involved in, that is ready to get some reasonable attention from our donors and our supporters. And that could be true for other NGOs that are involved in that sector of hygiene and health. So it will depend on which organization we're talking about. It will depend on what their supporters are persuaded to support. So far as Comopassion, we are still hopeful that whatever the after effects will be, we'll be able to face them and be able to go through them successfully. Okay.
Maybe like you earlier on put it in part of your preamble, that most of the donors, most of the countries that have been affected by COVID are donor countries. Don't you think it is an opportunity for African countries to begin being independent of themselves, not relying on European countries, not relying on people outside Africa to give us support? Don't you think it is an opportunity? Maybe it's a lesson that COVID is teaching us. Don't you think it's an opportunity for us to think of being self-reliant in the way we operate as NGOs?
Yeah, I think, Fred, I agree with you to a great degree. In human history and throughout the journey of mankind, every time humans meet a snag, or every time you meet a challenge, out of the challenge, you will walk out stronger than when you got into the challenge.
That's true.
That's true. I agree with you. I think, be it the NGO world, be it the business world, the true business world that is involved in commerce, I think at the end of COVID-19, all those organizations, all those companies, all those businesses are going to think about their business models, think about how to sustain their businesses out of turmoil like the one that we are currently facing. For the case of Comopassion, even before COVID-19 came by, we began a conversation to think about creating greater strength within our national offices within Uganda. For example, mobilize Ugandans to support fellow Ugandans. Freddie, if you can sponsor a child, we shouldn't be waiting for somebody from Germany, from USA to support that child. And the beauty is that the African culture is not individualistic in nature. We understand that you are happier when your neighbor is happy. And so supporting a child in need and out of poverty is part of our culture, it's part of our DNA as Africans. So we are hoping that once we have the right infrastructure in place, we are going to be able to begin knocking on the doors of Ugandans to say, hey, please support this child. But having said that, let me also observe that many churches and many local NGOs are already doing that. Even many families are already doing that. It's never a surprise to find an African with 2 children, but who is sponsoring, who is supporting work for other children from elsewhere. So it's part of us. It is only that it is unstructured, but we are already sponsoring children in the smallest means we can, within the means that we have.
Okay.
And so we hope to continue riding on that path to even bring that sponsorship into a more structured approach.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, like you earlier put it that it's important you get out of a situation and learn something out of it. Yeah. So other than us learning that maybe it's an opportunity for us to begin being independent in the way we do, in the way we think, in the way we exercise duty, what other lessons does COVID-19 have to teach us, maybe from the managerial perspective? I
think for me, come to think of it, let's not shy from the truth that humanly speaking you can plan, but at all times, from the human perspective, from a human perspective, you always plan. One of the things that we, in terms of business, you could think about, we grapple with the whole point of business continuity. How do you create buffer? How do you create some kind of capital that will help you to go through a season of trial like this one? Like it's a moment of trial. It's a moment of trial. There's no doubt about it. So how do you plan before the trial comes? So that when eventually the trial comes, for us who work with churches, we use what we call the Joseph approach to life. When Joseph was held in Egypt, he was out of forecasting what the future was holding. He was able to discern that 7 years, they were going to have 7 years of famine. And they began putting food together that would take them through the 7 years. That is the same model that every business should be thinking about. When the dark days come, how will I go through them? You can only have that conversation when the darker days have come. You have that conversation during the days of joy, during the days of flourishing. So that business model, I think, is going to be more meaningful in a more applicable way. In the future, after COVID-19, it will no longer be optional for every business to think about what would I do. But do you think we've reached that an extent where Ugandans can plan even before such circumstances and catastrophes come? Absolutely. I think for me, by the way, sometimes we underestimate the capacity we have. Uganda has proved to the international community that we are good at foreseeing trouble and prepare for the trouble. For example, our government began implementing some of the precautions, preventive measures. Maybe one would think we are good at seeing trouble, but we are poor off in handling trouble. No, but when you compare African countries, and you compare African countries with the Western countries in terms of handling COVID-19, where would you put your credit? Most likely you would put your credit to Africans. I can tell you that many analysts in the West say that the moment COVID hits Africa, we are going to be seeing corpses on the streets of Africa. That has not happened. And it won't happen. If we can implement, if we can go by the directives that our governments have put in place, preventive measures, simple things, wash your hands, keep a distance between you and the next neighbor, try to stay safe, try to, use the sanitizers as much as you can. Those small precautions, I think Africans have responded to them with the unquestionably great discipline. And so I would say, yeah, we are doing a greater job than sometimes the world recognizes. Okay, maybe based on Compassion, has this incident ever happened in the history of Compassion operation? Maybe we can broaden the discussion, but has this incident ever happened? No, I think this is unique. If you ask, are there moments when organizations, NGOs have suffered a downsizing or their revenues have been affected? Yes. You could pick it from there. And I think in 2008, many organizations went down out of business when the entire globe was suffering a depression, some kind of economic crunch. So it resembles that. It is not entirely the same. We know quite a number of NGOs which got out of business. We know quite a number of them which went into downsizing. By God's grace, Comopassion was able to continue growing to the tune of 7% during that time when many businesses were getting out of business. And so we cannot pride in that because we don't have anything that we're doing exceptionally well compared to other organizations. We always want to go back and recognize that as a Christ-centered organization, God is at the center of all that we're doing, and He will always make a way for us to continue serving His people.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are NGOs right there which are soon collapsing, or even some of them have collapsed. What should someone do amid such a crisis? What should an NGO do amid such a crisis when everything is wrong, when everyone is crying? What should someone do to get out of this kind of crisis?
I think, frankly speaking, I am not entirely qualified to advise on how to survive when you are on the verge of dying. I have led Comopassion. By God's grace, I have led an organization which has not been extremely disrupted. And so I can only say, for any organization which is going through such tough times, let them check out their core principles. It's very important.
Okay.
Even if you're getting out of business, you can still get out of business dignified and honoring the people that you're working with.
Okay.
If there are certain obligations that you have as an organization to be able to probably pay off some of the stuff that you have had, meet the obligation of the people that you serve. I think it is very important that all those stakeholders are involved in the conversations of either survival or closing down. So that you, even if you are going to take the painful option of closing down, you are not closing down with a terrible name. You are closing down as still a dignified organization that cared about people and served them to the best of your ability.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe last but not least, because time seems not to be our best friend. Last week you offered 120 billion. Was it a donation to government?
1.2 billion.
1.2 billion and another pledge which we are told it is soon coming.
Yeah.
Was it a donation to government?
Yeah.
Was it money given to government? Do you still hold the money to help you respond to a few issues? What was it?
By the way, did we say that all the money that comes to Uganda to serve Ugandans, you could say is Ugandan money? And so the 1.2 billion that one of my colleagues mentioned at the Prime Minister's office is not entirely an amount that has exchanged hands. There has not been any movement of money from Comopassion's coffers into the government coffers. It was a kind of recognition by the government of Uganda to say which organizations, which NGOs are supporting the people that we are caring about today, to give them the basics. So that amount, the 1.2 billion, by the way, it is more than 1.2 billion.
Okay.
We are anticipating, depending on how long the lockdown will take, that might even stretch to over 4 or 4.5 billion, depending on how long this happens. So essentially what happened was we looked into our priorities, looked at the money that we send to the churches, and earmarked an amount that is going to be used to buy food.
Okay.
That is going to be available to some of the families that we serve. And we are anticipating that so far the money that is being used is about 1.3 billion now that we are using to buy the food and make that food available. But we are anticipating that this might stretch even beyond that. So essentially, it was a recognition by the government of Uganda that Comopassion is making that investment.
Okay.
But not a donation to government. We don't donate.
It was an investment.
We also receive donations. We cannot then donate to. So all that money is for the people that we serve.
Country Director, your final remarks.
Yeah.
And finally, what is important to a child who is watching, you will still Comopassion continue operating amidst this lockdown. And finally, as you make your final words.
So, number one, I want to appreciate those Ugandans that are doing all they can to be able to respond to the needs of those who live in extreme need in our communities. If you are supplying flour or giving out beans to your neighbor, I want to say may the good Lord bless you. Number two is, in such a season like this, let us recognize that the neediest people, especially the children, tend to become the victims of such circumstances in extreme ways. When a mother cannot be able to feed their child, when a father cannot be able to meet the basic needs of their family, in most cases they tend to become irritable, they tend to become angry. So I want to appeal to Ugandans. Please, despite all that we're going through, please extend grace, extend love, extend care as much as you can. And finally, fellow Ugandans, I am persuaded to believe that much as these are tough times, but we shall be able to come to the end of this season and come to the end of this season stronger than when we got into it. Once again, I want to appreciate you for the opportunity for me to speak for the children of this country. And for the children that we serve, please be rest assured, you are still loved by your sponsors. We still love you. And so each one of you is known, loved, and protected. And we still pledge to continue supporting you the best way we can. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Leny Mugisha. Well, to you, the viewers, thank you so much. Like Martin Luther King Jr. says, that the ultimate measure of a leader is not where he stands in the moments of comfort, but in the moments of controversy. Amidst this controversy, amidst this crisis, like Mr. Leny Mugisha, he has said it is important for us to remain still, remain in control. At the end of the day, we shall overcome this pandemic called COVID-19. My name is Fred Makubuya. I'll ask you to stay continued to Smart 24 because we have more in stock. Let me hand you over to Parliament as you continue to watch what is going on in the parliamentary chambers of Uganda.
Honorable Boya, followed by Honorable Yaguma. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.